But we did produce a bunch of stills, like this one, which maybe would have been used in the article if it had happened. I think there's a shot of Dot in like workout gear with a couple of weights looking in a mirror. I saw that somewhere online, which was one of the ones done for that. But and like shots of her above and things like that. Yeah, but what was the second part of the question?
Oh, what content did you have planned for it that never made it into the show, either cut by ABC with their brutal BS&P standards, or...
Oh, right. No, anything specific? Can I think of anything specific?
Anything funny, like...
It's fine. The funniest story about that was told by Dan in New York, and I'd forgotten about it, but it's absolutely true. By the time we got to season 2, we had a list a mile long of things that BS&P objected to. And we took all of them, or as many of them as we could, and we put them in bad book. And we sent it to the Standards and Practices lady at ABC, and she sent a letter back saying, "Show rejected." And Ian got on the phone and said, "Look, I'm sorry, I thought we were doing this for you." And they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, well, all those things you tell us not to do, we put them in this show as an example of the things you're not supposed to do. We did it for you guys. And the next day got a letter back going, "Show accepted." So, but I'll see if I can think of any specific examples for later, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. What we used to do when we got notes from ABC, I can't ABC. When we got notes from ABC, when we got notes from Standards and Practices, because they weren't always the same notes. You know, you get notes from the broadcaster, you get notes from the Standards and Practices people. What we would try and do was there'd be the inevitable stomping up and down, shouting and swearing. But then we'd calm down and we'd say, okay, this is what they object to. How can we deal with what they've said and make the story better at the same time? So basically, it's almost thank you, BS&P, for pushing ReBoot and making us work harder to come up with better storylines. Because, you know, you wouldn't let us throw something through a window. So instead we did this, and this instead. You know, to avoid throwing through the window, we did all this plot over here. So, again, I can't think of any specific examples, but I'll try.
So considering you don't really do the battle process, if you had a choice how the ending of season 4 would come around, did you have like a decision made on how that season would end?
I know exactly what happens after the hunt and beyond, and I'm keeping it to myself because
until they pooch it.
Yeah, because at the moment I'm not involved, but in this business you never say never. And you know, will we ever get to tell that story? Well, you never know. We might, and I'd rather save it because for two reasons. One, because we might get to tell that story one day, and two, because me telling you it is not going to be anywhere near good enough as for what you're anticipating. My telling of the story will in no way be as good as what's in you guys' heads, I think. So it would spoil it, I think, in a way. Yes?
From all the homages that you made in your games and such, have you ever had like the people starring in your original movies you're inspired by come up to you and say, "Hey, I saw you homage to this and this, and I thought it was awesome"? Or anything?
I spoke to Bruce Campbell once.
Awesome!
And I asked him, you know, did he see it? Unfortunately, no, he didn't. And I was gutted by that. I was like, I really wanted him to either punch me in the face or say, "You guys rock," or something. But no, that never happened. But obviously Gillian Anderson, but that was the wrong way round because we wrote the part. She approached us and said she wanted to be in the show. She loved, because she was in Vancouver doing the X-Files, and she loved the show. And she came for a tour of the studio. And of course we sort of said, you know, would you ever consider maybe appearing in the show? And she's like, "Oh, I'd love to." So we immediately said, okay, we have to do an X-Files parody. We have to get Mulder and Scully in Mainframe somehow.
Why weren't you able to get David Duchovny in?
He didn't want to do it. Yeah, exactly. He was a miserable bastard.
He would have had to go back to Vancouver for that.
Well, no, but they were still in Vancouver at the time. He just, honestly, because Gillian was like all over it. She was totally up for it, and she's a sweetheart. She really is a lovely, lovely person. And we said, you know, what about David? Would he be interested? And I can't remember whether she asked him, or we asked his agent, or we contacted him somehow. But basically, we got the answer back saying, no, I'm not interested. So, which is why we got Scott McNeil, I think it was Scott McNeil, to do such a cruel parody of David Duchovny's character in the show. Yeah. We did that on purpose. Yes, hello. Sorry, yes.
Okay. After season 2, when there was that thing for 3 years after,
yeah.
Was it hard to reassemble the voice talent and also create a team?
No, it's never hard to reassemble voice talent because actors love working. It's never difficult to get actors. It's like, hey, Mike, are you busy or would you like to do some more reboot? Oh yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Yeah. No, it's never hard to reassemble voice talent. But they're lovely people. Bless them. What was the second part of the question? Well, I mean, you got to remember at the time, like myself, Ian, Phil, the three creators, you know, we worked at mainframe. So it's not like we'd gone anywhere. We were still there. So, and Dan, in fact, Dan DiDio at that point now played a bigger role in the show. He was our liaison at ABC during season 1 and 2. But for season 3, he actually worked for, you know, we brought him on board and he was working at mainframe. So in a way, it was the opposite of hard. It was really easy, actually, to get back into it. Yeah.
Years and years ago, I had the pleasure of being very relevant.
Oh yeah.
But we talked a little bit about and the way they think that originally it was actually dark a little bit, and it turned out to be like there's only a major seasons from him more intense and followed this great program.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, and then the difference between that
yeah, I think what it was, and I don't know how much of it was conscious and how much of it was just incidental, but it just happened. But we'd been axed by ABC, right? The treacherous dogs. Had axed us, so we were really annoyed about that. And you know, we'd been on ABC for 2 seasons, and we'd kowtowed to their standards and practices and things like this. We'd put up with their crap for 2 years, and it was kind of like what's the word where it goes the other way? A backlash to that. When we conceived season 3, it's like, okay, you know, now we're in charge and we're doing it for us, and it's going to be dark and gritty and grown up. So we kind of went way over here. You know, we were over here on ABC, and now we had control. We went way over here. But during the course of developing it and creating it and writing it, it kind of came, you know, we pulled it back. We didn't go as dark. A lot of that was down to Dan. Dan, like, talking Ian down and saying, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, and you've got to give him, Matrix can't be that miserable. He has to, you know, and a lot of it, I don't know how many of you are in the panel, I was just talking about character. Characters, sometimes you start writing something, and you've got a plan ahead of you, and you start writing it, and the characters start talking to you, you know, delivering the lines in the scene. And they start pulling you in different directions. And it's like, that's what Bob would do. That's what Dot would do. You know, Andrea wouldn't say that. Andrea wouldn't do that. She'd do this. And the story you've planned out starts to warp and change and metamorphosize as you go through it. And it softened itself. Because a great example is Matrix and his dark, brooding nature. We did, when we created it, he was Snake Plissken. I don't know if you know Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. He was bitter and dark and miserable and grim and growled at everybody. And then we went, hang on a minute though. When he got lost in the games, it was him, Frisket and Andrea. And if Andrea's still with him, There is no way he would be that dark and grim and miserable, because she wouldn't let him. So that was an example of the characters and the story pulling it in another direction that you hadn't envisaged when you came up with it to begin with. It's like, no, if Andrea and Enzo had grown up together, there is no way. He might act rough, and he might be buff and tough and miserable with his scar and everything, but there's no way he's going to be Snake Plissken. He's going to be Matrix. He's going to be what he ended up being. You know, with the whole being mean to the Binomes, and then behind the scenes he's playing with the yo-yo going, so how many did we get? Yeah. Like, you're just not that good an actor, Matrix. Oh, okay. You know, so the characters did that. We planned something, and the characters pulled it in a different direction.